occupation. To win the hearts and minds, defend all humankind, tell the banks and the corporations, we're here to occupy the USA. Congress and the hedge funds stole our houses and our pensions, conspired to steal our health care at conservative conventions. We're here to stand our ground, we demand our jobs with justice. We're 99% in charge, now you'll just have to trust us. Stop the XL pipeline in its tracks across the heartland. Reject the filthy energy extracted from the tar sands. Clinton and TransCanada exposed before the nation. Corruption forces us to organize a new invasion. Welcome to the U.S. occupation. To win the hearts and minds, defend all humankind, tell the banks and the corporations, we're here to occupy the USA. This occupation won't be won with guns or ammunition, armed with creativity and righteous indignation. We do all the work, so we have the power to stop it. No workers, no work, not until we share the profits.
The one and only Emma's Revolution. Check out emmasrevolution.com.
We support our unions and our right to organize. Students, homeless, immigrants are strengthening their ties. We have struggled far too long, now let this be a sign. 1% in power meet the other 99. Welcome to the U.S. occupation. To win the hearts and minds, defend all humankind, tell the banks and the corporations, we're here to occupy the USA. Welcome to the U.S. occupation. To win the hearts and minds, defend all humankind, tell the banks and the corporations, we're here to occupy the USA. Democratize the USA. We're here to occupy the USA.
Warning, the following program contains news talk, solutions, and information not found in filtered media outlets. Viewer discretion is advised.
Attention, you are now about to enter
Filter-Free Radio.
So open your mind, push reset, and reboot your computer.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
FilterFreeRadio.com. Filter-Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. Now streaming every Sunday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern on WeActRadio.com. Better than news, better than talk. Filter-Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. They're going to occupy your mind.
When I talk about resistance, I think we have to stand up now and carry out acts of nonviolent resistance.
Because the truth is, we do have power.
We live in revolutionary times, but the counter-revolution is winning.
Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
Live Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. FilterFreeRadio.com.
This is my favorite show.
We have been given an opportunity to make a new beginning.
And I think it's very important for us to start to build a culture of resistance because what we're doing isn't working, clearly.
It's our job to very coldly assess reality and then figure out how to respond.
Your number one source for unfiltered truth, analysis, and solutions. FilterFreeRadio.com.
How do we change the world? Welcome, friends, to the conversation, at least a conversation about it. And how do we participate? Our telephone number, 503-746-TALK, Friends, alternative thinkers, independent minds, unfiltered truth, and news seekers. We are broadcasting live here today, Filter Free Radio. We're done with the status quo. We're ready to change it. We talk about how we change it, how we mobilize, how you and I get active and organize and be the change that we need. Hopefully, we reach one person out there, make a difference in one person's life. That eventually becomes a lifetime of difference. I'm also here for you to change my life. So if you want to participate, 503-746-TALK. You can Skype into the show, email us, tweet us. We're on Facebook. We're on Stitcher. We're on iTunes. We're on YouTube. It's all free. It's all there. Just search Filter Free Radio, friends. So good to have you with us. Portland, my hometown city of Portland, Oregon. It's so good to be here in Portland. The first city to officially divest funds from Walmart, and we're going to talk about it. Plus, I'm going to share with you a video that we actually shared with you back in November of 2013 when I was at the Walmart Black Friday protest with Portland City Commissioner Steve Novick standing there in front of Walmart in Southeast Portland, talking about how we're going to start divestment from one of the biggest evil giant things, a part of the corporate state. And I've got to share this with you, of course. If you follow this program, you know we've done live reports from the Black Friday protests for the last 2 years. We'll get to that in the second hour of the program. It's big news, and thanks to Yes Magazine and commondreams.org for making that news happen. I want to welcome, before we get too far into the show, our super duper awesome mass producer, our kick-ass all-around brother from another mother, my host from the other coast. I got a new line to throw in there, brother. Brother from another mother and the co-host from the other coast, Mr. Skeptical Scott, who is live in our nation's capital.
Hello.
In Washington, D.C. Hey, buddy.
I'm your East Coast co-host.
East Coast co-host. Hey, man. We missed you, bud. How you doing? Good. Always good to have you on board, buddy.
Good. Happy to be here doing my thing. Try and make it happen.
Heck yeah, bud. And sounding good, man. Sounding good. So, and we are making it happen. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the people who are making it happen. Let's talk about the people who are dissenting and the people who are resisting and the people who are participating in the nonviolent revolution to bring about real change. Because you and I know, brother, that they cannot outlaw the revolution. And I am so happy on this new Chris Hedges article. If you're not already reading Chris Hedges on a weekly basis like Skeptical Scott and I do, truthdig.com is the website where you can do it. It also propagates around to places like commondreams.org. There's links to all of it at filterfreeradio.com and filterfreeradio.net for the moment. The new article talking about Cecily McMillan, if you're not following the conversation on Twitter, it's hashtag justice, the digit 4, Cecily. Hashtag justice for Cecily. If you want to call in, tell us your thoughts. What do you think about the sentencing today? Cecily McMillan given the sentence of 90 days in jail, 5 years of probation for participating in peaceful, nonviolent resistance and protesting. Would love to know what you think. We talked about it a little bit a couple of episodes ago. Would love to know what you think. Our comment line is open at 503-746-TALK. Tell us what you think. Scott, what do you think? Can they outlaw the revolution?
I love the ironic title of that.
Yeah,
no.
Right.
Is the short answer no. I mean, that's the whole force or fraud. You know, I keep going back to this George Orwell quote that I can't get out of my mind. And it's just, it seems so, it's amazing how you go back and you learn and you read these past oracles of another time and era and how nothing's changed. There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, everybody's always been a struggle. It's been a struggle. There's always been the haves versus the have-nots. Those who have want more, and those who have not end up getting stolen from by the haves, of course. And here we are again. Basically, with a consolidation of wealth, it means a consolidation of power, and you have essentially, well, not essentially, you have, for lack of a better term, a global capitalist empire. that is basically controlling every aspect of our lives unless we resist and fight it.
Yep.
And what they've done to Cecily McMillan is make an example of her and say, this is what happens when you dissent. And I'll read a real quote from you from George Orwell real quick.
Yeah.
The George Orwell quote that I can't get out of my head is, quote, "A society becomes totalitarian when its structures become flagrantly artificial. That is, when its ruling class has lost its function but succeeds in clinging to power by force or fraud. Such a society, no matter how long it persists, can never afford to become either tolerant or intellectually stable. It can never permit either the truthful recording of facts or the emotional sincerity that literary creation demands. But to be corrupt by totalitarianism, one does not have to live in a totalitarian country." That's just a brief excerpt of a George Orwell quote. That's not even half the quote.
Well, that's why I love Chris. That's why I love Chris Hedges. That is essentially it. And that's why I love Chris Hedges, because that's essentially, Chris Hedges is our modern day George Orwell, if you will. And I love what Aaron in the chat room says, Jacob, I think Cecily should not receive any jail sentence whatsoever. Aaron, I agree with you. Scott, what do you think? Should Cecily receive any jail sentence from this?
You're being sarcastic?
No, I'm just asking. What do you think?
Oh, I love your sense of
90 days. Well, because she was facing a potential 7 years in prison, right? And
that's absurd.
It is absurd. It is ridiculous. And there needs to be more outrage and more organization. And I hope this really sparks an Occupy 2.0, et cetera. So what?
I mean, the irony is that she was physically and sexually assaulted by a cop.
Right.
A cop who has a history of these kind of assaults. If you read about the case, she was railroaded. I mean, the judge, it's just, you read all about the details of the case, the judge did not allow evidence that would basically explain to the jury and that how she was physically mistreated. They wouldn't allow the video of her arrest to be entered as evidence. I mean, how can you not show what actually happened to the jurors? Physically, visually, here's what happened. Bam, look at this.
Right.
Okay, now make a decision.
Right.
None of that was allowed by the judge. I mean, so it's a stereotypical railroading of an activist who accidentally, knee-jerk reaction, elbowed some guy in the eye who grabbed her boob from behind.
Right.
And by the way, the guy was a cop, and he brutalized her, and he brutalized another guy who, by the way, is also another guy who was arrested that same night, is actually suing the city of New York and this police officer for abuse. As his head was banged on every step on the bus that they dragged him up. It's so, what's the word I'm looking for? It's an inverted world we live in. This cop should be going to jail.
It's so odious.
It's odious. She should be getting an award for an award. She should be getting compensation for the abuse she endured, both physical and mental.
It's a good start.
I mean, the bottom line is she had a seizure on the scene there. If you see the video is graphic because it shows her convulsing, because they beat her, and meanwhile this cop walks free. He's probably still on the beat, probably still collecting our tax dollars as his income, and Cecily goes to jail, which again, our tax dollars put her in jail. Right. And for what? Because it's a totally inverted society, and that's part of the George Orwell quote: when a society becomes flagrantly artificial. Right. I mean, the whole sham trial that put her in prison, that let this, didn't even talk about how corrupt the police force is, and the brutality that was against these protesters who were just sitting in a park after it closed. It's just remarkable, and yet, what are they doing? What are they saying? What's the larger message? Well, the larger message is: don't resist. Don't protest, don't sit in, don't do anything. You will be brutalized and you will be put in jail, especially if you're an organizer. And by the way, she was also, they know who she is. She is an Occupy Deep Wall Street organizer. She's part of the organizing committee. She was very active in that, and they know her. And that's why she is the face of it. And of course, in most cases, if you read the Chris Hedges article today, which is, again, it's very telling, he interviews her in Rikers Island. Right. We can get into that a little bit more in detail.
No, we are. I'm going to read her statement next. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. That's my point. The point is that she was lucky enough to be able to fight it because of who she was. She had the support, of lawyers who came to her aid and took it to trial, because obviously the district attorney wants everyone, and this is true for anybody, it doesn't matter your case or the situation, they want you to plead out.
Yep.
They want to throw the book at you. They want you to plead guilty and sign something.
Because
and
it's less, in the end, it's less work, it's less paperwork. They don't have to deal with it. It's over. Next thing.
Yeah, next, move on. Nothing to see here.
Stamp, next.
She was like, I'm innocent. I'm not pleading guilty to enough felony. And so she lost in the long run. But hey.
Right, yeah. Facing 7 years in prison, you get 90 days in prison, 5 years probation. What do you think about getting 5 years probation and how that hinders your participation in the movement and participation in the activism? If you have thoughts on that, 503-746-TALK. Aaron in our chat room at filterfreeradio.net is having a great conversation here and says, I hope this doesn't chill any protest movement. I agree. This should spark more motivation, more inspiration, and more activism. If this makes you feel like you don't want to participate, let me share this. The last 45 seconds or so of an interview that we did on this program with a fellow Occupy Chicago participant who was arrested and abused for a similar nonviolent peaceful protest. And the interview is at our homepage right now at filterfreeradio.com. Listen to her kind of inspirational comment at the end of this and how being arrested, being abused, being confined, being held for 24 hours just for simply participating in a nonviolent protest at Occupy Chicago back in 2011 does not deter her from wanting to get more active. This is our interview with James Cox, the last few seconds of this.
I'm so sorry to hear, of your experience, and, my heart goes out to you, and any words of encouragement to those who might be afraid to show up, might be afraid of getting arrested. Do you have anything you'd say to those people?
I just want to remind everyone, I want to take it back sort of to the civil rights movement for women's rights and for the rights of minorities. Those people were afraid too. They were being chased by dogs. They were pulled out. The hoses were pulled out on them. They were beaten. I don't think that it's a matter so much of being afraid. Any great thing is going to take some sacrifice, and it's going to take strength and determination. We can't be afraid. Right now is not the time to be afraid. Right now is the time to be brave. I can't be afraid myself because it's past that. We're already afraid. We're already afraid to speak out and to stand up, so I can't be afraid any longer, and I don't think that any of my brothers and sisters are either.
Oh, I love that.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps.
I love it, bro. And
that's a damn good point.
That audio clip.
Afraid. I know, I'm afraid.
That audio clip has been on our website at filterfreeradio.com since October of 2011. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
People need to go through and check stuff out.
She makes a really good point. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, I know personally we're afraid. I mean, you were interacting on Twitter with US Day of Rage. Don't you think the NSA is going to follow that?
Yep.
I mean, US Day of Rage they're the ones who are part of the NDAA lawsuit.
Right.
With Alexa O'Brien.
Right. No, I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, great. Now we're on the NSA's radar for what?
Well, our first, as folks know, maybe our first comment line when we had our comment line back in Washington, D.C. was in area code 202. And one of the revelations that came out in the Edward Snowden leak, I think Glenn Greenwald was the one reporting on it, talked about how the 202 area code in Washington, D.C. was one of the targeted area code, things. And also we talk about Chris Hedges. We've interviewed Chris Hedges. We've played audio clips of Chris Hedges, and we read his stuff on a regular basis on this program as well. And he's on their watch list for absolutely ridiculous, bogus reasons because he's a real journalist, goes around the world and interviews real people about real things really happening, and that somehow classifies people as, he might be an associate of some sort of terrorist organization because you're doing real journalism.
Yeah, that's the whole corruption of the NDAA, which is the evisceration of our first, fourth, and fifth rights, which is in that section 1022 of the NDAA. National Defense Authorization Act. If anyone doesn't know about that, just read that one section. It just basically uses the nebulous term associated forces, which means and Cornel West and Noam Chomsky were also on that lawsuit with Chris Hedges, and I think the ACLU brought that lawsuit. In any case, I mean, if you're a journalist and you interview someone from Al Qaeda, you're associated.
Right.
That means you could be locked into a military gulag and disappeared without trial, without habeas corpus, without anything, and regardless if you're a U.S. citizen or not. That's fundamentally anti-constitutional, and it should be illegal. For that matter, it's against. I mean, it's just against the UN. It's against. I mean, you name it, dude. It's illegal. It's criminal, and it's fascist. I don't care what it's against. It violates all kinds of common decency, just for reporting on the other side of the story. In the case of someone like Chris Hedges, and he listed, you see the interview with him. And by the way, his interview is on our website from a couple years ago, where he talks about what that specific lawsuit, before it even got to trial, and what it means. Because he lists the people. He's like, I have interviewed 15 different organizations that are considered terrorist organizations, and the term associated forces could mean a journalist. It's essentially what it means, and then they know that's what it means, and that's sort of the whole point. But yeah, that's called the criminalizing of dissent. That's part of George Orwell's force or fraud. If once we see through the fraud, they will use force on us.
Yeah, exactly. What else do you have left once the fraud is exposed? Time to go to the forest. Hence the flagrant reference there for the NBA fans, right? Oh, you mean you're talking about flagrant fouls? Yeah, these are big fouls here. We're getting some great listener feedback on Twitter. You can tweet us at Filter Free Radio. Harry Pomp says, a federal police state attacking citizens is justification to expect decency. Obama organized 18 agencies against Occupy. Let us not forget. Hey, good reminder there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They cleared the encampment.
And also, I'm sorry, Aaron mentions in the chat room that Cecily, I didn't know this, but Cecily, on that day that all of this went down, she wasn't even there protesting that day. She was there to fight and friends, apparently, to go out to grab a couple of drinks on St. Patrick's Day.
She was swinging by after class to pick up people for a drink, and she just happened to be there at the very time. And I think she was probably there for like 20 minutes, she said. As it was winding down, because apparently the park closes at dark, but they didn't give them any chance to leave the park. They just rushed the park with their batons and their what do you call it, shields or whatever, and just crushed people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's right. She got her. That was the irony of it all. Is despite her history as an activist and an organizer, that she wasn't even there to do such things. She was actually just there to meet some friends.
Right. That's ridiculous. Here is Cecily McMillan in her own words in a statement that she released to supporters who were planning a rally in her honor, in her support in New York City. This is what she said, quote, I came to New York the summer of 2011 to go to school. Rikers Island was definitely not on my list of intended experiences. Though I did call myself a radical, that title stretched only as far to include plans to start a socialist student chapter and study welfare policy with aims of improving it. Within 1 week, these plans were railroaded by the Occupy Wall Street movement, and for the following 3 months, I did little else. Like many, the eviction of Zuccotti Park left me lost, searching for that infectious energy that bound so many together in efforts to transform the world. Like many, I've spent the time since trying to understand what we've had and striving to get back to it. Like many, I point to a lack of militancy in our movement, a commitment of one's entire being, personally, politically, emotionally, physically, to the greater good. But I examined what action those beautiful words entailed. I exchanged militancy for the concept of love ethic, a distinction born of the belief that fights between us's and them's run counter to the collective we, and we being human society with each person as an integral part that must be seen, must be heard, must be felt, must be loved in order to transform the whole. Like many, I found my beliefs easy to come by but difficult to act on. I always strived but often struggled to see, hear, feel, to love, even as I expected as much in return. I began to question, if it is such a struggle to solidify amongst a few, how can we hope to strengthen love ethic across the many? Unlike most, when my trial began, friends formed a support structure. Comrades came to court. Journalists reported the injustices. When the verdict was read, cries of outrage were heard, the news spread, and sympathy and empathy was shared from around the world. Unlike most, during my weakest hour, I had never felt more supported. Though I had never, ever felt more oppressed, I had never felt so much love. I stand resolved to keep fighting because your love ethic props me up and allows me to do so. Unlike most, I am blessed with the support of so many, and though I am thankful, I am also thoughtful of the many forced to face such oppression alone. I know you have already done so much, but I'm going to ask for one more thing. If you feel safe enough to share, please raise your hand if you have ever suffered police violence, if you have ever suffered sexual violence, if you have ever suffered the violence of the justice system, if you have ever suffered the violence of the prison system. Raise your hand. Oppression is rampant. Take a moment to try and really see, really feel, really hear the suffering of the many around you. Now imagine the power of your collective love ethic to stand against it. And only through the pervasive spread of such a love ethic by the many, for the many, not just the privileged few, we will finally have ourselves a movement. Quote, Cecily McMillan to her supporters, wow. How about that? That is, first of all, that's good stuff.
Yeah. And there's why she was arrested in a nutshell. She knows the real deal.
Right, and it's not about, you look at the sentencing, oh, she could have been thrown in jail for 7 years. If she was thrown in jail for 7 years, that would have sparked a much more outrage, I think, amongst us.
Yeah, they know that would have brought everyone to the streets. I think that's, but the point here, too, is what she's left with is 5 years probation means that she cannot be swept up in a protest. She can't be present. They will arrest her, and then she will get 7 years.
And we do get it. We do live in an oligarchy, and we see examples of it on a daily basis. And there's justice for the rich. You know, it's the golden rule. Those who have gold makes the rules. And they are the owners. They own us. They own the judges. They got the judges in the back pockets and the politicians. They own them, and they own all of the media except for us because we're doing it independently. It's just me, myself, and I and Scott. Here we are, filterfreeradio.com.
That's 4 of us.
There are lots of other people who make the show possible, and we thank all of you at the end of every show. And we'll get to that as well. We'll do shout-outs. But in the solution here, the answer is, how do we change the world? It comes from this dissent. It comes from this resistance to the corporate state. It comes from showing up, getting in the streets, organizing, creating the movement for what we need. Everything that we have that we take for granted, the minimum wage, which is too low and is not a living wage, 40-hour work weeks, child labor laws, all of the above, all of those things that we kind of take for granted. Oh, America's such a great country because we got the very human rights, social justice godmother just comes around and goes, poof, everything's good every once in a while. And we don't have to fight for anything. And then we can just hang out on our iPhones and iPads and iPods and tune out, right?
I like that one. You need to quote that.
And
I'm just going to go tune out.
And so it's like we've got to tune in, friends, and we have to participate. Like Tom Hartman says, my former boss, tag your it, right? You have to get out there and get active. So it is all part of the bigger picture, which is us trying to be the change in the world that we want to see, right? To quote Gandhi. How do we change the world? It starts with changing our lives and making those small changes in our lives that Scott and I have begun to do, and we begin to highlight and profile on this show. And then we begin to change the lives of those closest to us, around us, our friends and family. We begin to, and then share those life-changing moments with others.
Yeah, you lead by example. I mean, it's a lot. People will follow when you do something that they like. They won't listen to you, though.
Right. And so it grows. It's all about that bottom up, that grassroots, that you tell 5 friends, they tell 5 friends. Pretty soon, everyone's showing up at the Occupy movement, which I would argue, now in hindsight, to really call it a movement, I was talking about this last week, it was more like the Occupy tactic of a movement that never really came to fruition. And we need to create that movement. We need to participate in general strikes and protesting and demonstrations. There's the reason why Portland is going to be divesting funds from Walmart is because for the last 2 or 3 years on Black Friday, one of the reasons is because on Black Friday every year, protesters show up at Walmarts and we protest and we make sure that people know what the heck is going on. And if you missed all of that, you can just go to YouTube and type in Filter Free Radio Walmart. There you go. It's great stuff.
Oh, yeah, we can get into that, too, if you want. I know we got to go to a break here in a minute. It's kind of a much longer conversation. How these things evolve, how you actually get to the point where cities like Portland divest from Walmart. I mean, it doesn't come from the city council going, these guys are bad, we should do the right thing. It comes from, as you said, every Black Friday and beyond, people protesting, people calling her. No, just, it's cliche to say call your congressman, and that's definitely not enough. But it's something to put a bug in their ear. And then you back that up by having en masse people standing outside with picket signs saying, hell no, we're not going to take this anymore. And then they go, God, we should, and the irony here is that when what you do is you make it politically expedient for these so-called politicians, regardless of their political
court
stance.
Years, isn't that what?
They're really the courtiers of
the
wealthy elites. The courtiers.
I don't know.
Anyway, they're court jesters is what they are. Anyway, they you make it politically expedient for them. I had a recent conversation with somebody who talked about this on a local level in my area, and basically what they did was these developers wanted to turn this small plot of farmland into dense housing to the detriment of local watershed. And then you organize people to show up at the hearing in the county council. This is on a county basis, not even state or federal. And all of a sudden, this small basic hearing, what was pretty much a done deal. There's 300 people packed into this room, all getting up and telling their story. And then suddenly, also, by the way, it's an election year.
Right.
And so the 9 members...
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so the 9 members of the county council, I'm sure 5 of whom wouldn't have voted for it, voted it down, or would have voted for it. You know what I mean? So you make it politically expedient. And the irony is that these assholes don't care. They didn't do it because it was the right thing to do. They did it because they were scared of their own political careers. But you make it impossible for them to do otherwise. And let's face it, most of them were in the back pockets of these rich, wealthy land developers. But they would not have gotten reelected. That's for sure. And so because people are aware and people are pissed. And so they know, well, if I want to maintain my job, I better do what they want. Because that's how it works. It's not that we have financial power, because we'll never be able to match the
people
wealthy
power.
Financially. Yeah, but you make it politically expedient. And they know they're not going to get the votes, and they'll be out of office. And it's not because they give a shit. It's because they have no choice. And that's how power is exerted. En masse, in numbers, in first person, have to be there.
The question is not how do we find the right candidates, and don't get me wrong, tomorrow is election day here for a special election in Portland, and I hope we elect Nicholas Caleb to city council. Check out calebforcouncil.org and calebforcouncil.com.
Oh, then that's all the reason that they passed this, dude.
Right. And if you haven't voted already, you need to vote. But like we're talking about here, the voting is just the beginning. And the question is not how do we find the right people to lead. The question is how do we make those in power afraid of us? Because you and I know the first problem here is there's no incentive to do the right thing. We have to force them to do the right thing, and we have to force them what we need them to do for us. We have to demand our rights, not just to party. You can demand your right to party, that's cool. But you got to demand your right to a living wage as well, friends. We'll continue the conversation. We'll take a short break here at the bottom of the hour. It's Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean, live in Portland, Oregon. Skeptical Scott, live in Washington, D.C. Check us out, filterfreeradio.com and filterfreeradio.net. We'll be right back.
This is Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. This is what democracy looks like.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio. Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean. With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
But I just don't subscribe to the common memes, and I don't subscribe to either political parties anymore because they don't represent us. They represent, well, their own interest, obviously, and furthering their own interests, and furthering the interest of wealthy financiers who obviously pay for them to get elected, and that's who they serve. So what do you do in this situation where obviously changing the players doesn't change the game? It's like you can vote, but don't spend more than 5 minutes on it. Then the time it takes to go to the polls and pull the lever and then move on, and then get back out in the streets and protest with your signs and raise awareness and educate people.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
And that comes from reading. I mean, really, you have to start reading alternative critical thinkers, the Noam Chomskys of the world, the late Howard Zinn, people who document these things. Activism is what brings about change, and change comes from physically being in the streets. The biggest lie is that I'm an internet activist. Well, there's no such thing. You're either an activist or you're not, but there is no internet activist. It's like, well, that means you don't get out of the house, which means you don't really accomplish anything. You know, you're not organizing, you're not getting people together in the streets, you're not actually pushing for a real change that you want to see. You're just more talking about it online, which is the same as a conference call.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Let's review the rap sheet of Wall Street banks. Defrauding investors, cheating homeowners, money laundering, rigging markets, tax evasion, credit card ripoffs, and so sickeningly much more. At last, though, some of the cops on the bank beat seem to be having regulatory epiphanies. The New York Times reports that some financial overseers are questioning, quote, whether such misdeeds are not the work of a few bad actors, but rather a flaw that runs through the fabric of the banking industry. Regulators are starting to ask, is there something rotten in bank culture? Really? Where have they been? Millions of everyday Americans sniffed out that rot back in 2007 at the start of the Wall Street collapse and nauseating bailout. Imagine how pleased they are that it took only 7 years for the stench of bank rot to reach the tender nostrils of authorities. Still, even slow progress is progress. Both the head of the New York Fed and the comptroller of the currency are at least grasping one basic reality, namely that the tightened regulations enacted to deal with a too-big-to-fail issue do nothing about the fundamental ethical collapse among America's big bankers. The problem is that, again and again, Wall Street's culture of greed is rewarded. Bank bosses preside over gross illegalities, are not punished, pocket multi-million-dollar bonuses despite their shoddy ethics, and blithely proceed to the next scandal. More restraint on bank processes miss a core fact. Banks don't engage in wrongdoing. Bankers do. As Comptroller Tom Curry says, the approach to this problem is not to call in more lawyers. It's more like a priest-penitent relationship. This is Jim Hightower saying, public shaming can be useful, but it should include actual punishment of the top bosses. Take away their bonuses, fire a few of them, and prosecute them.
Hightower's commentary is brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown. From Wall Street to Washington, this monthly newsletter reveals who's doing what to whom and why. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
Hi, this is Kenny Pick from Turn Up the Night. Here are some of the hijinks you can expect from my show.
That right-wing Republican from Texas was only helping Dennis because he thought Dennis would be easier for Joe the plumber to beat than
Wow. Yeah, I mean, seriously, a pet rock would have been better candidate than Joe the plumber. I think he might actually have been a pet rock before he was a non-plumber. So, but he was a union pet rock, never mind. Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick, streaming live every Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern at Radio or Not, Talk Radio 1, Progressive Blend Radio, and KennyPick.com.
Hey friends, I'm Jacob Dean of Filter Free Radio, your home for unfiltered news, activism, and sustainable solutions. Listen or watch Filter Free Radio live Mondays, 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern at our official website, filterfreeradio.com. It's a show about changing the status quo and mobilizing we the people to get active, participate, and be that change. Filter Free Radio is also available for free on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Facebook, Twitter, on Nicole Sandler's RadioOrNot.com, and Liberal Justice Radio on the TuneIn app. And now you can hear Filter Free Radio on We Act Radio, 1480 AM in Washington, D.C., weactradio.com. Help us be the change and make a difference. Please visit filterfreeradio.com and keep up the good fight.
This is Liberal Justice Radio.
Now here's a place you always meet a lot of friends.
Liberal Justice Radio.
Watching the people get leery. It's not very pretty, I tell thee. Walking through town is quite scary. Not very sensible now.
This is Kenny Pick from Turn Up the Night, and you're listening to Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean. Check out filterfreeradio.com. Live every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern.
I put it to riot. I put it to riot. I put it to riot. I put it to riot.
Climate change made me get a haircut. If you've noticed for over the last several months, I haven't got a haircut. I was digging the freak flag. If you're watching us on the video stream, you're wondering why I cleaned up a little bit. Well, I'm going to tell you, 90 degrees in mid-May in Portland, Oregon is not cool. And thank you, climate change. I got a haircut. So, hey, there you go. Is it climate change?
Yeah, your girlfriend didn't like it.
Or is it Carmen change?
Don't lie, dude. Your girlfriend didn't like your hair. That is hot and uncomfortable.
We're talking about the crackdown, the silencing of dissent, and the crushing of resistance, and today's sentencing ruling on Cicely McMillan, the Occupy Wall Street nonviolent protester who was abused by an undercover cop. She received 90 days in jail, 5 years probation. I think the 5 years probation is the real significant part of that, because that hinders her participation in the movement and in activism on a more on the ground, showing up in the streets level. I love what folks in the chat room are saying. We're chatting over at filterfreeradio.net, which you can check out some of the new live website stuff we have open and going at filterfreeradio.net. You click on Watch Live, and there we are, and there's the chat room. And Abby in the chat room mentions fines should be based on a percentage of your income. That's an interesting idea. I like that. And also, Abby adds, I also believe that whatever the sentence is, it should be doubled if the offender is paid by taxpayers in enforcing laws, so judges, cops, etc. would get the justice deserved. Very interesting, and I love the comments. If folks want to comment, 503-746-TALK, you can go on the air. You can call us and leave your comments anytime, 24/7. A lot of people listen to us on the free iTunes and free podcasts and all sorts of free Stitcher apps and all that stuff. So if you're not participating live, you can still participate with the show. And call us, leave us your messages, and we will play them on the next programs coming up. 503-746-TALK. We can get into this Chris Hedges article a little bit, which I love. It's over at truthdig.com. They can't outlaw the revolution. And if you're not reading Chris Hedges on a weekly basis, every Monday at truthdig.com, you can check out filterfreeradio.com. We're usually covering what Chris Hedges is doing and talking about. And this week, he goes to Rikers Island to interview Cicely McMillan. And in the article, he starts off the article, Cicely McMillan, the Occupy activist who appeared before a criminal court in New York City this morning, Monday, May 19th, to be sentenced up to 7 years on a charge of assaulting a police officer. Of course, we know she received 90 days in jail and 5 years probation. Sat in a plastic chair wearing a baggy, oversized gray jumpsuit, cheap brown plastic sandals, and rim-horn glasses. Other women, also dressed in prison-issued gray jumpsuits, sat nearby in the narrow, concrete-walled visitation room, clutching their children, tears streaming down their faces. The children, bewildered, had their arms wrapped tightly around their mother's neck. It looked like the disaster scene it was. He goes on, McMillan says Grantley Bovale, who was in plain clothes and did not identify himself as a police officer, grabbed her from behind during a March 17, 2012 gathering of several hundred Occupy activists in Manhattan's Zuccotti Park, which we've learned Cecily was not there to participate in the activism, but rather to meet up with friends to go out for other plans. In a video of the incident, which is available, and you can watch it, and it's rather graphic, and I personally get sick to the stomach feeling anytime I see things like this, which is why I don't show, the graphic, blood and guts stuff on this program. I'm not into that. If you're into that, you can go find it. It's out there. But this incident, it's violent. It's disturbing. And or she appears to have instinctively elbowed this undercover police officer in the face. She says she has no memory of what happened because the video and photographic evidence, mostly not permitted by the judge to be shown during the trial in the courtroom, supported Cecily McMillan's version of the events. There is no dispute. She was severely beaten by police and taken from the park to a hospital. She was handcuffed to the bed and was found guilty after a 3-week trial of felony assault in second degree. She's receiving 90 days in jail, 5 years probation. She says, quote, in this interview with Chris Hedges at truthdig.com, quote, I am prepared mentally for a long sentence. She told me this past weekend when I interviewed her at the Rikers Island prison in the Bronx, quote, I watched the trial, I watched the judge. This was never about justice, just as it is not about justice for these other women. One mother was put in here for shoplifting after she lost her job and her house and needed to feed her children. Another is in here, a preschool teacher with a 1-year-old son she was breastfeeding, who she let her cousin stay with her after her cousin was evicted. Turns out the cousin sold drugs. The cops found money, not drugs, that the cousin kept in the house, and they took away the mother. And they told her to leave her child with the neighbors. There's stories after stories after stories like this, and it wakes you up. Cecily McMillan's case is emblematic. This is Chris Hedges writing. Her case is emblematic of the nationwide judicial persecution of activists, a persecution familiar to poor people of color. Her case stands in contrast with the blanket impunity given to the criminals on Wall Street. Some 8,000 nonviolent Occupy protesters have been arrested. Not one banker, not one investor, not one person behind the root cause of the problems really has been held accounted for or has gone to jail for causing that 2008 financial meltdown and the continued perpetual horse crap that is still going on. And the disparity of justice mirrors the disparity in incomes and the disparity in power. And if you joined us last week, we talked all about Saul Alinsky organizing people power and coming together and empowering ourselves, because Occupy activists really now, all activists need to come together, and we have to stop this whole, self-identifying with labels of I'm only an environmental activist, or I'm only here to protest for marriage equality, or I'm only here to get high and for legalizing marijuana. If you're here to change the world, then we have to come together, friends, and do it together all across the world.
Not to diminish those issues,
right?
I think the important thing too is to remember that, and this is why I love Chris Hedges, and he talks about this in an earlier article. That the fact of the matter is, if you follow the rise and decline of civilizations in a historical context, and I'm talking about empires, Roman Empire, Greek Empire, Austro-Hungarian, fill in the blank. Even Greece, for that matter, most recently. You look at these countries, rather, that rise and fall, and what happens is, we can sit here and decry, yes, we're making progress on gay rights, yes, we're making progress on marijuana decriminalization, but that's all going to be wiped away when we flip to a complete authoritarian dictatorship, when the military takes over our country and we don't have any of these rights anymore. It's irrelevant. And that's sort of the point here, is that all the civil rights, all the gains made by the civil rights movement are going to be wiped away, in one fell swoop. Once we lose our democracy en masse, when it becomes obvious that the Pentagon runs our society,
and it's obvious that it's already being eradicated in front of our eyes. Slowly.
Yeah, I mean, look at this case. This is obviously a case. God forbid you should ever get arrested or in a routine traffic stop, and for whatever reason, you will find the full force of the state behind, against you, and that's it. You're over. You don't have a constitution. You don't have habeas corpus. Sure as hell don't have a First, Fourth, Fifth Amendment. So. And that's the whole point here is that, we can focus on gay rights and really, I think, a bit larger issue, of course, being climate change, which is going to wipe the entire planet, a species off the planet. The human species will be eviscerated off this planet, and probably justly so. It'll probably be the first time in millions of years that the planet will be healthy again. But anyway, the point here is that it's really about organizing and seeing the big picture, and that is taking control of our lives.
Yes.
Because we are being controlled, we are being manipulated in various forms, and certainly technology has the ability to do that. It certainly has the ability to make people distracted, and that's sort of what entertainment does. I mean, it's bread and circus. Look at the Roman Empire; it's bread and circus. Back in the day in the Roman Empire, you can go watch, murders and gladiator fights. The Colosseum was open 24 hours a day. You can go to any time of the day and be entertained, and of course, and well fed.
Hey, the Bread and Circus is live 24/7. Did you watch the music awards last night? It was the Billboard Music Awards.
No,
I tuned in for a couple of minutes. It was just absolutely ridiculous. The whole time I was live tweeting, "This is the epitome of all that is wrong with popular culture." Hashtag willful suicide.
Jeez, making up your own hashtags, huh?
And it was, and it's like, and they got the, tune in. Michael Jackson's going to be performing live like you've never seen him before.
Are you shitting
me? No, dude, that was the big draw last night. The live, never before heard song, and Michael Jackson's going to be performing live, right? Well, they are getting better with their computer-generated imagery. Of course,
holograms.
the holograms and this.
That's disgusting, man. Making money off the dead.
Yeah, that was my exact response. Who the hell is profiting off of Michael Jackson still? And two, how the hell do you sleep at night? I mean, come on. The Bread and Circus is live and thriving well, man. And we have to shut out that poison. Shut out that poison.
You just reminded me of the. If anyone's ever read or listened to, I encourage people, of course, to go to YouTube and go to my blog and listen to Chris Hedges' lecture on Empire of Illusion. The very first chapter in his book, Empire of Illusion, talks about the spectacle of Michael Jackson's death and his funeral, and how they turned it into a 2-week bonanza for ad revenue for the television networks by rerunning endless things on Michael Jackson's life.
Right.
And they just exploited his death for a profit, and it's disgusting, and that's where we are as a society. It's about money. It's always about money.
Right.
I mean, the whole cliche, and I love as I get older, I realize these cliches that I was taught as a child, these mnemonic devices are so true, and I really am starting to grasp just how true they are, and that's, of course, money is the root of all evil. It really is.
It really is.
So it's
at least to clarify, maybe the love of money, the greed aspect, because money essentially could be apolitical. I mean, I don't believe, of course, I think, money would corrupt anybody at some point, but if Skeptical Scott and I had the money that the Koch brothers had, for example, we'd be changing the world for the positive and for the good for all. I don't think that money really changes who you are on the core, at the core level, on the inside. And what you do with that money really, really says a lot about who you are. And so I think the money thing is just like an apolitical. It's what you do with it, and that's where the greed comes in.
Well, that's the basis of capitalism.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about the problem. We can get into the whole economics of it, dude. Don't get me started. Because
Richard Wolff on Economic Update.
Oh my God, Richard. Yeah, I love Richard Wolff. Go to Economic. Go to rdwolf with 2Fs.com or .org. I think anyway will get you there.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, he's awesome, man, and he really did a good thing this past week about the whole the internet. What do you call it?
Net neutrality, which we should stop.
Horrible term.
I'm so with Lee Camp. We have to stop calling it net neutrality and call it something like internet freedom, because if it wasn't for the internet and internet freedom, shows like this would not be existing. We had no platform we have no platform left. The corporate state has got a stranglehold on all of it. And, you know, as much as we could get together and form a new radio station, new TV station, and do that, it costs a lot of money. You need a corporate backer, and we don't have that. So what do you do?
But, you know, getting back to money being the root of all evil, that's the whole premise of capitalism. The fundamental, I mean, really, and again, there's a movie called Capitalism is the Crisis. It's on YouTube. It's on my blog. Capitalism is the crisis. That's the whole fundamentals of capitalism. If anyone's ever played a game of Monopoly, I can't say this enough, the game is over when one person has all the money. That's where we are as a society. That's where capitalism is. And it's not just, it's important and very even overwhelming to understand that it's global. These capitalist corporate powers are supranational. They are not just limited to the United States. They are global. And as soon as, as we can tell, the money is leaving the country. And of course, Richard Wolff talks about this on his show this past week. The fact of the matter is, you look at Pfizer, look at these other companies, they just take their money offshore.
Right.
They reorganize, and they move themselves overseas, even though we are their primary base for income because we buy their drugs or we buy their products or whatever. But they don't pay taxes, and because they just reincorporate in the Cayman Islands or somewhere else. It doesn't matter. That's the point. It's global. Right. And meanwhile, they own countries. I mean, when you get so big, you think about it. What happens when you have so much money? You know, if you're a local politician, if you're local, you buy a local politician, you buy a council member, you buy a city council member, you buy a mayor.
You're thinking small, dude.
I'm getting there. You buy your state representative, you buy your governor, you buy your state senator, then you move up. You buy your congressman, you buy your senator, and then you buy the presidency, and then you buy the country. And you start buying countries. And we have these organizations like the Koch brothers, bingo, like the Koch brothers, like fill in the blank of wealthy oligarchs, Wall Street financiers, who just start buying entire countries. I mean, these laws get rewritten in their favor every day, so they don't pay taxes and they make money. It's called insourcing profits and outsourcing expenses. And where does that come from? It comes from you and I. That's sort of the part the prison industrial complex is about. That's what the lack of minimum wage. It's what lack of a living wage is certainly about.
Yeah.
What the lack of health care as a right is about. And that's the fundamentals of capitalism are that if you and I talked about this afternoon real briefly, and we can just touch on it for a second. I think we got to go to break here in a few minutes. But the fact of the matter is, the way capitalism works is that those who can afford it get it. Those who cannot afford it do not. And you put a price tag on everything. Everything is a commodity. Healthcare is a commodity. I mean, jobs are a commodity. Let's face it. We have students coming out of college now who can't get jobs, and so they intern for free with the hope of getting a job.
Yep.
So you're actually
been there, done that.
Literally a slave working for nothing with the hopes that you will someday get paid for that. It's insanity. I mean, it's fundamentally, I'm pretty sure in some cases it's illegal, actually. I did read but that's another topic. But the point is, everything is a commodity to be exploited until exhaustion or collapse, and to be sold to the highest bidder. And that goes for healthcare, that goes for the internet, that goes for fill in the blank. That goes for, roads, bridges. They're privatizing. I've been on many private bridges. They're privatizing everything. It's part of what the commons, it's the whole premise of the commons, what we can just determine is good for everybody should come into play. People should not die and starve in the streets. Kids shouldn't, education's another big one, by the way.
Yeah.
With these so-called, what do you call them, charter schools. Yeah, right.
Profitizing.
It's putting a profit on education. Because let's face it, knowledge is power. That means knowledge is worth money, and then because money is power. And so here we are. Everything has a commodity price on it, and most of us cannot afford it. And it's increasingly being pushed out of the market. We're all being pushed out of the market for everything. Healthcare is an obvious one. If you can't afford healthcare and you don't have a job, then you don't get it.
Yep.
Education's another one. It's very obvious. But there's a lot of things that are a lot less obvious. And certainly, affordable housing is another example. If you don't have a nice house, if you don't have the money, and so on and so forth.
We can't. If you want the bumper sticker is we can't afford to profitize everything. That's the bumper sticker.
Bingo. Everything is not a commodity. The natural world is not a commodity. Air and water are not a commodity. Unlike Nestle, who wants to privatize all the water and sell it back to us. Yeah, Monsanto, who wants to privatize life with the food we eat. With this food industrial complex owns the food we eat. If you can't afford it, you don't eat good food. Period. And you're malnourished. There's many documentaries on it. Food Inc. is a fantastic documentary, by the way. Changed my life. And there's a lot of them. I mean, it's all out there. It's all there. It's all been documented. It's just important for us to understand and research and read, and learn what's really going on in the world. And it really comes down to capitalism. I mean, I'm not 100% opposed to capitalism, but it comes back to the whole point of money is the root of all evil, because consolidation of that money leads to consolidation of power, which leads to evil deeds. And the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil and these Wall Street financiers are very good examples of this.
Thanks, Obama.
And I'll tell you,
love that one. Thanks, Obama.
Abby in the chat room says, as a fun fact, it takes 78 years at minimum wage to equal what a Koch brother makes in 1 hour. Chew on that for a second. And that speaks to the success of the Occupy movement in raising the awareness of the wealth inequality, the extreme inequality, the really irrational inequality, and really speaking to the point that we need to continue to dissent, we need to continue to resist, to speak truth to power, hold those in power accountable, demonstrate and demand our rights. Demand a living wage. Demand what we need, friends. That is what we are talking about. And we're going to continue this conversation. I hope you stay with us after the break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the city, my hometown, Portland, Oregon, the first United States of America city to divest funds from Walmart. Got a very cool video to share with you. We'll talk about that. And then we'll take your calls on anything you want to talk about. Our comment line is open, 503-746 Talk, and we hope to talk with you next. Don't go anywhere.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott every Sunday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. We Act Radio, 1480 AM WPWC. WeActRadio.com.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio. Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean. With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
I don't care who knows about what I'm doing. If it's just me and the universe, and that's all that knows about what I'm doing, that's fine with me. But I have this internal, some people call it a conscience, some people call it a moral compass. I have something inside of me that's telling me to do something, to show up. And I'm going to do it. And I'm sure that someone out there has a similar voice, or, I'm not saying like, I hear voices. No, not like that.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Just the idea that it doesn't matter who's watching. It doesn't matter who cares. What matters is I know what I'm doing. I know what I believe in. I know what my morals are. I know that I'm standing up for them. And I know that I'm not going to give up. And if that means that everything else goes to in hell in a handbasket, then so be it. At least I know I can sleep at night.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
We got no plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. We made progress in the war on homelessness this month. This is huge! That's so exciting, right? Sorry, we made progress in the war on the homeless. We made progress against the homeless. Several areas of this country are now criminalizing living in your car. It's about time someone showed those car livers who's boss. I don't mean car livers. I don't know much about cars, but I don't think they have livers or any internal organs, really. It'd be gross. Anyway, Silicon Valley and other areas are instituting large fines and prison sentences for living in a vehicle. But for many, It's a last resort, right? No one chooses to cram themselves into a Chrysler LeBaron day in and day out. No one's like, God, I love a nice hotel, you know, but this upholstery that smells of cigarettes and Slurpee farts is the only way to get a true night's sleep. I'm gonna skip out on the whole Omni penthouse, you know, although I appreciate the offer. I'm gonna skip out on that and just, you know, tuck my legs behind my head and make love to this passenger seat because I really enjoy waking up with a beef jerky stuck to my neck. That's the good living. No, car housing is a last resort. How about instead of declaring these people criminals, we declare them people who need some assistance, and we give them a bed and a warm meal inside, I don't know, a fucking Brookstone store because they're not using it for anything important. In between the nostril massage kit and the self-piloted feline Bluetooth belly scratcher, I'm sure those employees could make some room for the homeless. Then homeless people could sit in those chairs, right, that massage your prostate while they're cooking a steak for you, you know, or whatever the fuck they do, rather than tricking idiots into buying that shit for other idiots. That's been your Moment of Clarity from LeeCamp.net. I want to give a shout out to Troy at Vulu.com, who just became the latest sponsor member of the Moment of Clarity show. Also, I'm only going to be performing 5 minutes, so you probably shouldn't fly out to see me perform, but there is a great show in Los Angeles called the United We Stand Festival. It includes Immortal Technique, Public Enemy, Wu-Tang Clan, Rooftop Revolutionaries, Jill Stein, Larry King, all kinds of people, Sean Stone. I can't even list them all, but so come check it out, Los Angeles United We Stand Festival, and my new comedy special will be out any day now. Keep checking LeeCamp.net for that.
When greed is hurting you to World War III, and you label truth a conspiracy, round and round we go, so you better take them up for a moment of clarity.
Progressives across the country are taking action, from Madison, Wisconsin, to the Occupy movement. And now, Washington, D.C.'s newest talk radio station, We Act Radio. Progressive talk returns to our nation's capital. We Act Radio is proud to showcase the biggest names in progressive talk radio, including Stephanie Miller, Tom Hartman, Bill Press, Ed Schultz, Sam Cedar, and original live shows from our Anacostia studios. Speak Easy with Kamon Freeman and Ron Pinchback. Available on your radio dial and on the web at weactradio.com. That's We Act Radio, WPWC 1480 AM in Washington, D.C. Truth is our product.
Hey friends, Jacob Dean here with exciting news. You can now hear my show, Filter Free Radio, on the free Stitcher mobile app. Just visit our website, filterfreeradio.com, scroll down on the left-hand side, and click on the Stitcher logo to hear us on Stitcher. That's all there is to it. No syncing, no taking up memory on your device. Just Filter Free Radio on demand for you on the go. Plus, you can rate and review Filter Free Radio on Stitcher. The more you rate, review, and share us, the higher we will rank on Stitcher, and that means the more people will discover Filter Free Radio. It's never been easier to enjoy Filter Free Radio and help us spread the word. Visit our website, filterfreeradio.com, and click on the Stitcher logo to hear us on Stitcher. Unfiltered radical truth-telling, anytime, anywhere. Thanks, and keep up the good fight.
This is Liberal Justice Radio.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message. I love you. Now, back to our show.
Liberal Justice Radio.
FilterFreeRadio.com. Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. Now streaming every Sunday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern on WeActRadio.com. Better than news, better than talk. Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. They're going to occupy your mind.
When I talk about resistance, I think we have to stand up now and carry out acts of nonviolent resistance.
Because the truth is, we do have power.
We live in revolutionary times, but the counter-revolution is winning.
Sounds like a case of the Mondays.
Live Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. FilterFreeRadio.com.
This is my favorite show.
We have been given an opportunity to make a new beginning.
And I think it's very important for us to start to build a culture of resistance because what we're doing isn't working, clearly. It's our job to very coldly assess reality and then figure out how to respond.
Your number one source for unfiltered truth, analysis, and solutions. FilterFreeRadio.com.
However, you are joining us, watching us live at FilterFreeRadio.com or FilterFreeRadio.net. Also broadcasting live on RadioOrNot.com, on Liberal Justice Radio, on the TuneIn app and TuneIn.com. We're also on We Act Radio, 1480 AM WPWC in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. However you are joining us, it is so good to have you on board. Welcome back to the second hour of the show. Taking your calls, our comment line is open. 503-746-TALK is our telephone number. It's 503-746-TALK. 503-746-8255 is the telephone number. You can also Skype into the show. Email us, Jacob at filterfreeradio.com, skeptical at filterfreeradio.com, on Twitter at filterfreeradio, and of course, like our Facebook page, facebook.com/filterfreeradio. Lots of great stuff on all of our independent alternative media outlets. Fantastic stuff. I'm coming to you live from Portland, Oregon, where I was born. I was raised, proud of it. Portlandian before it was cool. And I've lived here my entire life, other than the 2 or 3 years that I moved to Washington, D.C., to work for the Thom Hartmann program. And I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity, because along that experience, I got to meet our super duper awesome best producer and co-host, Mr. Skeptical Scott, amongst many other things. And Scott, brother, it's always good to have you on the program. And I really
good to be here.
I really miss doing the show live with you in studio, like just hanging out and having a good time.
Having a professional studio to work in is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, right? And now that we're really doing this on the independent grassroots level, we need your help. Hence the donate button, which has just magically appeared at the top of our website for the first time in 3 years. We do have a little bit of bills and things that we've accumulated. Not much, but it's a little bit over the last 3 years. It's not free to do the show. We do need your help. And we know that a lot of folks can't donate money, and that's why everything is free. All the podcasts are free. All the news is free. The blogs are free. The videos are free. The interviews are free. It's all archived. It's all free. Download it. Use it. Whatever you want to do with it, it's there for you. And if you can donate a word of mouth, tell 5 friends about us, it would mean so much to us, and I can't thank you enough. I started off by saying I'm here in Portland, Oregon, and here in Portland on Thursday, May 15th, 2014, the city here got rid of $9 million, or about 25% of its investments in Walmart. And this marks the beginning of a divestment program that will purge Portland's investment portfolio of $36 million in Walmart bonds by 2016. Now, first of all, I'm like you. I'm also shocked that Portland was already investing $36 million in Walmart bonds. Okay, that's a problem, and especially here in the liberal bastion of Portland, Oregon. And tip of the hat and good on our city commissioner here, Steve Novick, for kind of spearheading and introducing this solution, part of the solution to part of the problems, right? And the divestment plan, which if folks don't know, I learned this one a while back too. Divest is the opposite of invest, right? So, if you're going to invest in something, the opposite of that is to divest, right? Divest, whatever. The divestment plan. Divestment is part of the city's responsible investment initiative, which was introduced by City Commissioner Steve Novick and was adopted back in October 2013, about 7 months ago. This initiative also prohibits the city from purchasing Walmart bonds in the future. It's a small step in the right direction. Portland is not only discontinuing its investment in Walmart, but it has also set up a committee to advise the city on making socially responsible investments in the future, being smart with the money, because you and I know it's all about the money. And if you know, you and I stopped shopping at Walmart, for example, Walmart really wouldn't notice that unless, of course, everyone stopped shopping at Walmart. But if you stopped shopping at Walmart and went and gave your money to your local farmer or your local community-supported agricultural nonprofit, food co-op, they would notice that impact. They would notice that impact on a significant level. And that's what it's all about.
It all starts with you. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. BDS for short, which is how they fought apartheid in South Africa. And by the way, it works. You just refuse. It's the whole Mario Savio thing that we close our show with. The operation of the machine is so odious that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And not just protesting, but I mean, I personally, as an example, stopped shopping at grocery stores. I shop at my farmer's market almost exclusively. And whatever else I get from my local food co-op, which is nonprofit, worker-owned, a little socialist grocery store. It's an organic grocery store. It's owned and operated by the people who work there. And they make pretty low wages, but they do it for the love of what they do, and it's helping the community, and it's also in a low-income community. That's a side note. But the point is, what you put in your body is what's killing us, because people are getting cancer from Monsanto, from all these genetically modified, forget the genetically modified corn, wheat, and soybean. How do you think it's genetically modified? It's genetically modified to resist the pesticides that they spray on it. And then we eat these pesticides, or we feed these pesticides to the animals that we eat, and becomes concentrated in their meat. And we eat concentrated poison. And it's really, I'm going down a rat hole here for a second, but the fact of the matter is that these things are literally systems of death. And the food industrial complex is one such example. And so what do? You say, I will not participate anymore. And you go to your local farmer's market. You find where it is. I had to literally look it up online, find the nearest one to me, drive to it. It's out of the way. It's farther away than my grocery store. And by the way, things cost a little bit more. But guess what? When you buy these more expensive things, you will eat less because you will have to cook it yourself, and you won't be able to go out.
I wasn't thinking that's where you were going with that one. But that's how you save the world one bite at a time and save yourself.
That's the point, man. I'm getting tangential, but the point is that it's a step-by-step process. Right. And I didn't overnight start entirely shopping at my farmer's market. I used to shop there and my local nationwide foreign corporate-owned grocery store. And I've just gradually weaned myself out, because it's funny how you get to the point when you start to make these changes that these institutions that you are beholden to, whether it's your corporate grocery store, or whether it's the television networks, etc., and you stop watching, you stop participating in these systems. When you do try and go back to them in some form, or you're exposed to them again around friends and family, they really bother you. Like, I can't watch television anymore without yelling at the television.
Got to shut out the poison. No,
yeah,
I get
it's
it.
Poison, man.
I get it.
I can't watch ABC News anymore. I can't take
And
it. I
it's
can't
tough.
walk in a grocery store.
I
walk into a grocery store, it drives me nuts, man. I can't stand it.
It's really hard, and I get it. It's tough because most of us, first of all, don't have a union because they've eliminated, workers' rights and any support of the working people. And we don't have a living wage, so most of us can't afford to shop anywhere but Walmart. But so it's a systematic
that's
enslavement. Really?
Yeah, it's becoming less and less true, by the way, because, for example, my farmer's market takes WIC, they take food stamps, and they take, what's the other one? There's a third one. Anyway, the point is they take government subsidy checks. And, by the way, you would eat a lot healthier. And I know personally, my farmer's market's in a little, SNAP, thank you, take SNAP. My farmer's market's in a low-income area, and I see a lot of women and children shopping there, and they spend their SNAP checks there, and they buy actual meat and produce.
Right.
And by the way, when it goes farther, because you actually do get more money. At the very least, you get more nutrition for your dollar. And then you are actually, I'm surprised. I mean, I live alone, and I cook and eat for myself. But I spend about the same amount of money. I spend about $100 a week on groceries, or less. actually a little bit less, and I eat more, but I eat less. If that makes any sense. I eat more nutrient dense food. I probably eat more often, but I'm eating less in volume because I'm not eating this corn.
And you're
I'm not
getting your
eating-
nutrients from your food sources and not some
Yeah.
supplement that you have to take because you're eating malnutrition food, which is full of
Right.
GMOs. But anyways,
Right.
the point is not only do you and I have to stop investing in things like Walmart and be more a part of the solution than we are a part of the problem, we also need our cities. First at the local level to stop investing in Walmarts, and hopefully at a larger level as well to really get the point across. And Scott, you mentioned we're talking about capitalism here. We're talking about systems of death. Literally, do we not remember the garment factory fire and collapse a couple of years ago?
Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Oh, you're talking about the
Yeah.
Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in the 30s?
No, I'm talking about the
Bangladesh.
Walmart subsidy. Yeah, exactly, in Bangladesh, and killed several hundred thousand.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah, the
several
difference
hundred
between
or
now-
1,000 garment workers.
Yeah, the difference between that and that scenario is one example, but the difference between now and when a similar thing happened at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in, I want to say the 30s or 20s, I can't remember. And it might even be the teen. Actually, it might have been. I think it's anyway. It doesn't matter. I think it was 1919. But the point is that all these things have been outsourced, so we don't see or hear them, and it certainly doesn't affect us because we don't have loved ones who died. We have these images on our screen on our nightly news that, oh, by the way, a Bangladesh factory collapsed and burned, and 300, I think it was 800 people or something. A lot of people died, and it doesn't affect us viscerally because we're not immediately attached to it. And it's part of the disconnect of capitalism.
Yeah.
In the system we live under now is that these things have been outsourced to the lowest common denominator. It's a race to the bottom where these third world countries are suffering based on our consumption. And so it doesn't affect us directly, but it does, and we're not able to actually see it.
Right.
And so it is coming home to roost, though. I mean, the crap we buy is a lot lower quality, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Et cetera.
Folks are chatting in the chat room at filterfreeradio.net, and I want to mention one of the new things at our new website is the new poll that we have, and our question we have up on our poll, should the minimum wage be raised to $15 an hour? And folks have been voting. We've got 10 people who've voted so far. Your options are, hell yeah, raise it to 15, or no, you commie. So far, 90% voting yes, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. 9 out of 10
Who's the
people.
one person that says you're a commie?
I don't know, but somebody voted don't raise it. No, you commie. So
That's quite a loaded question you got there, Jacob.
yeah, but back to the point. We sidetracked there a little bit. During a press conference last week, Portland City Commissioner Steve Novick announced the Portland divestment of funds from Walmart initiative plan and encouraged other cities to adopt similar initiatives. He says, from what I can tell you, no other U.S. city has looked at socially responsible investing in quite the same way as Portland has begun to do. I'm hoping that other cities and states take note and adopt similar investment principles to hold companies accountable and align our investment policies with our values. Align our policies with our values. What a radical idea that one is. Meanwhile,
yeah, dude.
Meanwhile, the company's net income, Walmart's company's net income, fell 5%, and shares fell 2% in the first quarter of 2014 this year, failing to meet Wall Street's expectations for a third time in 5 quarters. Walmart blamed its poor performance on bad weather, which has nothing to do with climate change that Walmart's globalization is not contributing to. So,
oh, that's ironic.
So, I say all that to say this. Steve Novick comes out. It's big news. Thanks to Yes Magazine for making this news, and thanks to commondreams.org for also making this news, the news of Portland becoming the first city to divest funds from Walmart. But I seem to have a vague, familiarity with that topic already, Scott. It seems like you and I have already talked about that. And matter of fact...
I don't shop at Walmart. What's your point?
Matter of fact, I went in and dug out this clip that I've got to share with you. And followers of this program know that I have personally been at the last 2 annual Walmart Black Friday protests in Portland back in 2012 and 2013. And every Black Friday in November, the day after Thanksgiving, when everyone rushes out to Walmart to buy another cheap piece of crap made in China that you don't need, on Black Friday, we all go to Walmart and we protest. And we've been doing it now for the last couple of years, and there's organizations, Jobs for Justice, and unions show up. There were a couple of hundred people at last year's event in 2013. This was about, 5, 6, 7 months ago now, November of 2013. And then City Commissioner Steve Novick spoke about this. Divestment of funds from Walmart. Not only did I show up at the protest and cover it, we covered it on this program, on Filter Free Radio. So this news that came out this week, you already knew about 8 months ago, if you're following this program. And
damn, dude, you're way ahead of the curve.
So it's always nice to, and it's not just, tooting our horn as, hey, look, we were right. No, this is the conversation that we're having here, and this is the conversation that gets filtered out by the corporate media, and we have to go to independent sources that we can trust to have these conversations. And Scott and I, you and I, brother, have been doing this now since August 1st, 2011. Been doing it.
Damn, dude, we're older than the Occupy.
We are like a couple of months older than Occupy, and so
Occupy. Remember we want to call it occupying the airwaves or something like that.
Yeah, well, Tom Hartman still uses "occupy the airwaves," occupying the airwaves. I'm just saying.
Anyway,
Steve Novick, Portland City Commissioner, spoke about this, and we covered this on this program 5, 6, 7 months ago. And I went and clipped this out. And I want to share this with you because this is news now. And in case you don't believe me, this was recorded live by yours truly at Walmart. All of the videos are posted at our website at filterfreeradio.com. About the easiest thing you can do is go to YouTube, type in Filter Free Radio and Walmart. Just type in Filter Free Radio, Walmart, click search, and all of our stuff on Walmart's going to come up. All the protest videos for the last 2 years of the Black Friday protest videos, including the full video that this clip comes from, and more. So here is Portland City Commissioner Steve Novick, recorded by yours truly at the Black Friday Walmart protest, November 29th, 2013, Southeast Portland, in front of Walmart. How Portland is going to divest funds from Walmart. Check this out.
Steve's going to go first, and then we'll take it from there. So, warm welcome for Steve Novick from City Council. Trigger and you're good. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, a few months ago, somebody was asking me about the city's investments, and I looked at the list and I looked at the criteria, and I discovered that we had no criteria. The city of Portland, which prides itself on progressivism, had no socially responsible investment criteria. Wow. So I said it was time to change that. Yeah. And a couple of months ago, the city council agreed that going forward, we're going to look at our investments through a few screens. We're going to look at how companies treat workers. Yeah! We're going to look at how they treat the environment. Yeah! We're going to look at their impact on health. Yeah! We're going to look for anti-competitive market practices. Yeah! We're going to look at general corporate ethics. Yeah! And we decided from now on, we're going to start developing a list of companies that we will no longer invest in. Yeah! And we did everything right and proper. We established a committee to help us figure out how to use those criteria. We decided we were going to wait to put one company on the list, and that company was Walmart! You got it! Woo! And the past 2 weeks have only served to justify our decision to start by putting that one company on that roll of dishonor. Yeah! The New York Times last week said that some European companies have stepped forward to compensate the families of the victims of the Tazreen fire in Bangladesh, where 1,200 died. Yeah. But one company, the company where as of 2 months before the fire, records showed that 55% of the products were for their contractors, has not stepped up to help. Guess what the company is? Walmart! And then, as you just heard, Walmart recently was caught putting up signs in their stores saying, "Help associates in need."
Shame!
Shame! Colbert had a little fun with that on this show. He said, you know, there's some people who say that Walmart's not doing enough for its associates, but I think that's unfair. It's not that they're not doing enough, they're not doing anything! Hey! So it's an honor to be here with you to put the pressure on Walmart. And remember, pressure works. Pressure worked 25 years ago in South Africa. Pressure worked in the Nestle baby formula boycott. Pressure works. So keep up the pressure. And let's remind Walmart, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
There you go. How cool is that? Let me throw
that
another.
Sounds like a lot of fun, man. Did you have a good time there?
We had a great time. I put together like a 35-minute documentary style of my coverage of the event. Met some really cool people. I can't wait for Black Friday so I can go back again this year. And we'll have Commissioner...
Why wait, dude? You can do it any day.
Well, yeah. It's... one of the things we talked about in the Saul Alinsky organizing is to plan it out, to think it out, and to use significant dates that are inside of the people's experience, and then provide a third narrative or an alternative kind of presentation within that narrative. So everyone goes shopping at Walmart on Black Friday, right? So Black Friday is a good day to be in front of Walmart protesting, for example. But like Scott says, you should be out there fighting for whatever you believe in. What is your cause? That's what I advocate for. I don't care.
Yeah, where's the Derek Jensen 5 questions clip, dude?
Yeah, that's a great clip.
Comes to mind when you say that. You know, just as a side note, I think it's important to recognize that this is 8 months ago or 7 months ago. My math is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how long it takes. I mean, you guys have been protesting for a while now. And that guy was out there, and he was a city council member. Was he already a city council member at that time?
Yes.
The guy was at yeah. So what that does is it says that, I mean, these protests, this is how long these things take. It doesn't, you don't show up one day, protest, and then all of a sudden things change.
It's a process.
It's a process. And it's important to note that 8 months later, something's being done about it. And it's only being done about it because you guys are out there. You better believe that this guy, as much as you want to love him, isn't doing it on his own, and isn't doing it because he doesn't have the full faith and backing of people who are in the streets. He just doesn't come up and go, oh, I know this is right, I'm going to do it. Obviously has the support of his constituents and people who have physically been out there protesting, and of course this is on the nightly news as well. I mean, there's good documentation of these things. So
yeah.
It's a process. You got to show up and you got to agitate.
And it's really important to mention we're not fighting for a big all-at-once revolutionary change to happen tomorrow. Because if it were to go down like that, you're going to see blood, you're going to see violence, you're going to see counter-revolution, and you're going to see problems. That's not the solution. The solution is to hold these revolutionary positions and ideas, to think outside the box, and to implement change slowly. And this is exactly how the haves who currently have changed the system over the last 40, 50, 60 years systematically. It's been a slow, incremental change. Because had they taken everything and wiped out the middle class all in 1 week, we would have had a revolution.
Yeah, people would be pissed.
But when you do it slowly, gradually over the course of 60 years, no one notices the changes. And that's exactly how we have to change it back to where we need it and where we want it, and the solutions we got to make happen. But I'll tell you what, we're going to continue this conversation. We would love to hear from you. When we come back from the break, our comment line is open, 503-746-TALK, 503-746-TALK. What do you think? Tell us. Open line, 503-746-8255. More unfiltered radical truth-telling. Jacob Dean live in Portland, Oregon. Skeptical Scott live in our nation's capital. Filter Free Radio continues next. Don't go anywhere.
We need a movement of truth tellers.
The kind of progressive grassroots movement.
A social movement that they can engage in that's not the politics of hatred, that's not the politics of fear, but the politics of hope.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
There's two ways to approach history. You sit in your armchair and you watch it on the news and you return to your PlayStation, or you get out in the streets and you make it.
They can push the rest of us to wake up and do something about this.
People need to rise up and say, I'm sick of this.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Seeing themselves as a huge movement to transform the nation.
The change that we want comes from below. It comes from a movement.
The American people can and will find ways to push for the kinds of changes that can get us out of this dilemma.
I want to see that change, and it's going to take people here in this country to be able to make that happen.
Filter Free Radio. FilterFreeRadio.com.
From someplace out of this world, this is the Space Dog from the Space Dog Radio Show. SpaceDogRadio.com, your remote location radio station. In case you missed them, here are some excerpts of shows we did last week on Space Dog Radio. From someplace over Portland, Oregon, USA, this is the Space Dog Radio Show. Well, it looks like the railroads claimed a national security, and keeping oil train routes secret is a bunch of crap. We've had a lot of great responses from you on all our stories. Just reached the top 10 on Reverb Nation again, so thanks to all our listeners out there. So, another hit to the media mayhem. That's right. AT&T Inc. on Sunday agreed to buy DirecTV for $48.5 billion. That's $95 a share. And the move will give the telecommunications company a larger base of video subscribers and increase its ability to compete against Comcast and Time Warner Cable. They agreed to the merger in February. AT&T's proposed combination, which is subject to government review, could improve the internet service by pushing existing Uverse TV subscribers to video over satellite service and thereby free up bandwidth on the telecommunications network. The combination would reduce consumers' options for pay TV providers from 4 to 3 for about 25% of U.S. households, according to Morgan Stanley analyst Ben Swinburne. Fewer competitors could result in higher prices, a situation that usually gives regulators cause for concern. No shit, really. AT&T is going to want to buy DirecTV, and that will narrow down the availability of consumers to buy from 4 companies to now only 3. From someplace over London, UK, this is the Space Dog Radio Show. Well, looks like voters have turned down an increase on the minimum wage in Switzerland. And there you go, some excerpts of shows we did last week on Space Dog Radio. Hear more at SpaceDogRadio.com. Special thanks to Jacob Dean at Filter Free Radio for flying along with Space Dog Radio. We appreciate every flight. I'm the Space Dog. Be safe, be happy, and I'll catch you next orbit.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio. Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean. With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
I had the honor of interviewing Jill Stein, the actual Green Party presidential candidate for 2012. Our interview is at our website at filterfreeradio.com if you haven't watched it already. And in the conversation, I told Jill Stein, I was like, I used to work for Thom Hartmann. And where I'm at now is I'm developing a focus on the activism, on the participation, on the real difference making, not so much the political hearsay. And Jill Stein told me essentially words to the effect of, why is it that when people are abused, they always continue to keep running back to the abuser?
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Why do we keep running back to the Democratic Party that keeps abusing us when we, as progressives, should be progressing forward?
FilterFreeRadio.com.
This is Liberal Justice Radio.
Forget it, man, and get with the countdown. Shake this square world and blast off for Kicksville.
Liberal Justice Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott on 1480 AM WPWC every Sunday from 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. WeActRadio.com.
And welcome back to the show. If you're interested in the Jill Stein interview or our interview with Amy Goodman or our interviews with Bill McKibben or our interview with author David Swanson or Skeptical Scott's interview with Chris Hedges, all of that is archived and free at our website, filterfreeradio.com. Click on the highlights page. Under the main menu, click on highlights, and all of the show highlights and good stuff is right there for you. And again, if you've never been to our website before at filterfreeradio.com or filterfreeradio.net, which is where the new site is beginning to come together at, we've never, ever asked for your donations. We've never, ever asked for money. And last week, I put up the donate button to Filter Free Radio. Up until now, we've always asked if you could, spread the word, tell 5 friends about the show, help us grow grassroots style. This is how we need your support. We do need your monetary support as well. There's several $100s in web hosting, website fees that have accumulated over 3 years of doing the show, as well as, and I'm not talking about the cost of like the internet, for example. I'm talking about the cost of like the comment line and hosting the website, these things. It does cost money. It does come out of my pocket personally. And if you've ever had any use, if you enjoy the conversation, it would mean a lot to us if you could support us that way as well. And like I said, I would much rather you be out in the streets demanding your rights and protesting and making your voice heard and using your choice and using your voice to get active. That's what I would most like to see happen. And I would most like to see happen the world change for the better, and we be a small part of that. That's the real goal. And also to have fun doing the show, but also to be sustainable. And right now, up until, last week, we've never, ever asked for money, and I'm not very good at it, as you can tell, and, any support that you're able to donate to us is very much appreciated, and we couldn't do it without you, man. All the folks in the chat room, everyone following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, commenting on the show on Stitcher, all of the above. We really couldn't do it without you, man, so... I just wanted to throw that out there, and we've had the donate button up on both websites now for about 2 weeks, and we've received $0 in donations, so I'm just saying. Just saying. If you're wondering, it's all good. But hey, it's all good. And again, I know we don't have money. Jacob, Dean, have you ever donated to any cause that you personally believe in? No. And I don't have money to do it. I would love to give X-Ray FM $100 or $10 a month and become a sustaining member. I don't have it. I'm unemployed. I would love to be able to give the Mark Taylor Canfield Report a sustainable donation and to give Nicole Sandler a sustainable donation. I don't have it, and I understand that, and I get that, and that's why everything that we've ever done since the history of this program is free, and it's all free, and it's all archived, and it's all online. And let's have a real conversation about free internet for all. Really, the net neutrality conversation is not the conversation we should be having. It should be about internet freedom, first of all. Of course, we should talk about being able to access the web equally, the whole interwebs. And that's why when you go to filterfreeradio.com and it loads so slow and you're like, what the heck is going on? Because we don't have any money. I don't kick back to Comcast to open up the bandwidth like Netflix does, for example, okay? That's what net neutrality is about. We can also talk about the free internet for all movement, like Scott and I were talking about earlier. It comes back to privatizing, or in my words, profitizing everything, profitizing the commons, profitizing the education, profitizing the information, profitizing the internet, profitizing the access to the internet. I know that you have to pay somebody somehow, somewhere, some way, something in order to get to this show. even though everything is free and you don't have to pay to podcast, you don't have to pay anything to watch the show live, you don't have to pay anything, but you do have to pay to get on the internet. That is wrong, in my opinion, because the internet really is going to give our future a chance. It is a bootstrap by which the poor and the impoverished and the uneducated can use as a tool to lift themselves up by them bootstraps. Okay? We need to provide those bootstraps. We need to provide everyone free internet access. Period. No matter where you are. I mean,
the whole notion of what's it called, net neutrality or a free internet. I mean, look at Europe. I mean, we're light years behind Europe, and even South Korea. They have like 10 times faster internet. Everybody has internet in South Korea, but we don't. I mean, that's terrible. You look at these what we consider basically third world countries. They have a much better network infrastructure than we do, and they have competition. I mean, I would argue for the fact that it should be nationalized. It should be a right, not a privilege, like healthcare, like jobs, like all the above, and we should all have it. It should be like a telephone. Like you pick up the phone, you get a dial tone. You plug your computer into the wall jack, you get internet, period. No one thinks about it. It's just ubiquitous. Not $50, $100, $200 a month for some slow internet with a lot of ads and et cetera, by only one or two companies. I mean, it's insanity. It's monopoly capitalism. And they monopolized our commons.
Yep.
We got to take it back from them.
Yep.
It's ours. And it was created by the government, damn it.
It is the public commons. The internet should be free. It is a public utility. And we need to use it, right? Here we are. We need this show, and I need to, and this is, one of my personal missions from here on out is to be more vocal about issues like net neutrality, about issues like internet freedom, and about issues like free internet for all, because it is the 21st Commons. And if we want to give ourselves and our future a chance, we're going to have to open up the floodgates of information. And because back in the day, Edward R. Murrow didn't have to teach you how to read the newspaper because most people knew how to read the newspaper, and they still put the fucking news in the newspaper. Well, guess what, friends? The corporate media's got it the control. They own all the publications. They own all the radio stations. They own all the television stations. And this is why you don't hear what we're talking about on the corporate media airwaves. Because why would the corporate state promote, air, or sustain anything that's working against its own best interest? Clear Channel knows this. Today's the first day that the Randy Rhoads Show is not on the air. Okay, hashtag Randy's last day. I'll tell you why. It's because Randy Rhoads was still broadcasting out of Clear Channel, was still a part of that Bain Capital financed corporate state conglomerate, and they are doing everything they can to crush all dissent possible, especially within their own control. Clear Channel radio station KPOJ in Portland off the air since November 2012. And same thing with KPTK and Green 960. Clear Channel radio stations gone. Randy Rhoads Show gone. This is why we have to find independent media sources that we can trust. Hence, they're all online. Hence, internet freedom, net neutrality, free internet for all, a big deal. And we have to support and sustain those media outlets that are willing to tell us the truth, like theintercept.org or democracynow.org or commondreams.org or therealnews.com.
Real News.
I beat you to it. Therealnews.com. And
I love those guys.
And none of us exist without you. Right? First and foremost, the whole purpose of communication, there has to be three parts to communication. There has to be a sender, a receiver, and a message. So unless you have a sender, a receiver, and a message, you don't have communication. You have nothing. And if it wasn't for you, at this point being the receiver of the message from the sender of Filter Free Radio, we wouldn't have anything. So first and foremost, you are a crucial element to this operation. But you're also a crucial element to any of those other independent media outlets that you support, and they really need your help. That's my donate to us our plug.
Aaron in the chat room mentions how she lost Green 960. Remember them, Jacob?
Yeah, Green 960.
They went long before KPOJ.
Yeah. And, as the former producer for the #1 progressive talk show in the country, and we used to be based out of KPOJ in Portland, which is where I first got the job. And I always found it interesting that I was an employer of Tom Hartman and not I was an employee of Tom Hartman and not an employee of Clear Channel. So I literally had to walk up to the door every day and knock on the door of Clear Channel and be like, "Hi, can I come in and do my job?" I worked at Clear Channel at KPOJ from 2009 till 2010. And the writing on the wall was evident to clearly Tom Hartman and the whole operation there, because they were picking up shop and moving to Washington, D.C. And I, of course,
2 years later,
and I'm only 20 years old. I'm naive. At that moment, I'm into sports. I'm into rock and roll. I'm into college girls, and I'm into all the things I shouldn't be into, which all that stuff I'm still into, but I'm just prioritize. And if it wasn't for some sort of introduction into it, like a Tom Hartman program, for example, or a KPOJ, for example, if I was never introduced into that, there would be no Filter Free Radio. Jacob Dean would be Jacob somebody else, and he'd be, at the...
You take your girlfriend's last name? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. It's got to start. It comes back to what you were talking about earlier, brother. It comes back to the process. We played a brilliant speech, and it's still on our homepage of Ujamu Umi at the 15now.org event. And to paraphrase one of Ujamu Umi's points, he said words to the effect of, you don't become a revolutionary overnight. You don't go from being in bourgeois society to being a revolutionary tomorrow. It's a process. This is not something that these are not conclusions that I've come to in yesterday. I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. And I get that. And so, it's like, for me, how do we change the world? How do we get beyond talking about it and get out in the streets and be about it and do about it and be like Cecily McMillan and really try to organize and actually try to create change? I would consider myself to be a radical, to hold radical ideas and positions, but I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything at all. Do I have any plans? I got a new website coming. So what are we doing, right? How are we getting active? How are we participating? It's like everyone wants change, but no one's willing to change anything. No one's willing to start by changing their own selves and their own lives, which is why one of my personal favorite shows on X-Ray, which is the new nonprofit community radio station in Portland, on the air at 91.1 FM, and you can stream them live 24/7 at xray.fm is the website. The Adam Klugman Show, Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Pacific time on X-Ray FM, is by far my favorite show on X-Ray. And Adam used to do Mad as Hell in America on the air at KPOJ on the weekends. But Adam, his first show on the air on X-Ray was a really important message about how do we stop this, big-headed, I'm going to change the world, and start with really, what do we have control over? How do we change ourselves first? If we're going to try to change the world and we can't change ourselves, what makes you think you're going to try to change the world or be able to, right? And then you realize that it's much more than that. It's like, once you realize that once you change yourself and you make those small changes in your own life and you open your mind to new alternative paradigms, to new solutions that you may have never thought of before, then you begin to see the benefits of these changes in your own life. When you get off of Monsanto GMO food and start eating natural, healthy, organic things, you begin to lose weight physically. You can see the evidence and the benefits of that happening to you, like Scott has been experiencing for the last couple of years. Or when you actually make a personal choice to change something, like maybe we're talking about food here, why don't you go and help out maybe a friend or a neighbor who's less fortunate, and rather than give them some of the tomatoes that you've grown this year in your own garden, why don't you help them build their own garden so they can grow their own food?
How much better do you feel about that? You can tell people that you've tell them the story, man.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we helped out an elderly lady from our local church who is in need, like we all are, and we went over to her place and helped her built for her a new raised bed garden. It's about 5 feet by 10 feet. And, dug it all up, plotted it out, measured, cut it. She paid for the wood and the supplies to do it and for the local compost and soil mix. But we did it for her, and I wasn't going to charge her anything. And I did not accept any money or anything from her.
But A, you feel good about it. B, she gets to eat healthier, and she has her own garden now. And you did a good thing, man. I think it's called, pay it forward.
And that small act is just one small, really insignificant on the larger scale act. But, like you said, I feel great about it. She feels great about it. I've maybe on a very, very small, insignificant level, we've helped change her life. And that becomes a lifetime of difference.
Mike M in the chat room says, charge her a pie.
What's that?
You gotta have her bake you a pie or whatever.
Charge a pie. Yeah, right on.
Hey.
I will be more than happy to accept a food donation. As you can tell, I'm not shy from eating. What?
Right.
What?
You can be bribed with food.
I can very easily be bribed with food. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. But that's the whole point, though. That's the whole. It's difficult, and a lot of this stuff comes from. My personal life changes that I've tried to make. It all comes from reading. It comes from watching documentaries on Netflix. Food Inc. and Chem Miracle and the movie The Corporation. I gotta tell you, man, the 2000 documentary called The Corporation, which I think I watched in like 2005 or 6, really set me on the path to where I am today, to understanding how it is corporate America that is controlling our lives and is maliciously manipulating our day-to-day things we do, eat, see, read, hear, and touch, feel, all that stuff. And so, now when you start to say it's not enough to just say this is wrong or this shouldn't be done, but you have to get to the point where you say, I can't. And that is really the only morally reliable position, are those who say, I can't. I can no longer participate in this. I have to do something else. And I had a good experience today myself with that, where I was volunteering in my local food co-op, my local nonprofit worker-owned food co-op, and someone came in and said, I watched the documentary Food Inc. This is my first time being here today, and I was at the grocery store the other day, and I'm just walking up and down the aisles aimlessly looking at all this genetically modified crap, saying, I can't do this anymore. And so he's like, I looked up online, I found this place, and here I am, man. I'm here to buy some food.
That's so cool.
I was like, oh my God, you're where I was 2 years ago. That's awesome, man. I talked to this guy for like 20 minutes, dude. And he actually works at a grocery store.
Yeah, right.
Which is the irony. He's like, dude, I'm a receiver at one of these grocery stores.
That's super important, because that speaks to the individual's experience, how we're all unique, and we all have different unique experiences, and we all have different unique individual passions. And I know for a fact that we don't agree on everything, and I know for a fact that we never will agree on everything. And my point is we don't have to agree on everything. We have to get active for whatever the cause that we believe in. I don't care if we disagree, as long as you're getting active and organizing and participating and showing up for the cause that you believe in, man, more power to you, brother. And
yeah, that's the whole thing. And so what you do is, and that's just one small example. And this guy was like, I feel better already. This place is nonprofit. He's like, oh, I could volunteer here. This is like, it's a whole different experience from like standing in line at a grocery store, which is just abysmal, and checking yourself out, and just it's a miserable experience. The whole thing's a miserable experience. To go to, this is just one microcosm that I'm using as an example, to go to your nonprofit co-op or your farmer's market, where you actually physically know the people, you dialogue with them. Yeah, you spend a lot more time shopping, and maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but in the end, you're healthier for it, and it's a much better, more positive, less stressful experience, and you changed your life in that factor, and you've divested yourself from these corporate monoliths. And I'm using food as an example because it's one of the easier ways to start, but also...
And we all need food.
Yeah, of course we all need food. And so, also at my farmer's market, I have a lady who makes her own soap, who lives around here. And I've transitioned gradually, because when I first went to my farmer's market, there's a lot of vendors, and I didn't always buy from every one of them. Now I buy from almost every one of them. Some of the food vendors I don't care for. I don't care for the barbecue guy. But anyway, the point is a lady who makes her own soap, and so I transitioned into using her soap exclusively than buying Irish Spring or whatever. And her soap is fantastic, and she makes her own Castile soap, from natural oils and everything like that, and it's all homemade. And yeah, it's $5 a bar, but I tell you what, man, it lasts a lot longer than this other chemical soap, and I feel cleaner.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you feel, though? Do you feel like it works?
Yeah, I feel...
Now, let's be honest. How do you smell? No,
I smell great, man. She's got so many awesome scents. She got scents that you could never buy. Like,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, that's the whole cool thing. Like, she's got these 50 different bars of soap. She's always like, hey, tell me a smell you want to make, and I'll make it. And she's like, it's awesome, and you smell great, you feel great, and she even has like a shampoo bar, so I use it for shampoo. And
this is what democracy smells like, dude.
And I just feel physically cleaner. I feel better for giving my neighbor my money and not one of the chemical companies that manufactures these items. And I'm not poisoning myself anymore, and at least not in that manner, and not 100% poison free. But it's just small acts like that every day, and it's gradual. I mean, I didn't always buy soap from her. I started buying the vegetables, and then I discovered her, and I talked to her, and now I know her personally.
There you go.
It's making personal relationships with people who affect your daily lives.
And you gave her a filter-free radio card, right? And you said, hey, and this is our nonprofit show about changing the world too, right?
I don't do self-promotion, man.
I hate to do it too, man, but I'm the only one doing it. The only reason why y'all are here is because someone, probably me or Nicole Sandler, maybe mentioned, check out Filter Free
Nicole
Radio.
Sandler put us on.
Yeah, right.
We're on radio or not, etc. I mean, it is a word of mouth thing, and it is building communities. It really is all about building community, and I can't emphasize the need to build community enough.
Yep.
And that's how resistance works, by the way.
Yeah, amen, dude. If in our minute or so that we've got before the end of the show, buddy, is there anything that you'd like to really hit home on that we missed that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remember that resistance works on two tracks. You have to first build an alternative. You have to build alternative communities. You have to build alternative systems of support. You have to build alternatives to the current way of life, to the current culture, to the current fill in the blank. There has to be an alternative. So you build these alternative support systems, and then you transition away from the oppression of the corporate state, so that when you do protest and you do fight and resist, and the corporate state does collapse, it doesn't affect you. You have something to go to, like, oh, well, Wall Street crashed. Well, I don't have any of my money in the stock market. What do I care? And by the way, my farmer over here is still going to have food. I'm still going to have water. I still have a job a local nonprofit job, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to build systems, two tracks. One, build a resistance movement and build alternative support systems. And two, fight and resist and bring the system down. But you can't have one without the other. And it really starts by forming these communities. And community is so important. I can't emphasize it enough.
Heck yeah, dude. I'm so spot on. I'm so with you. My final thoughts for the episode. Of course, we have to wrap up. We've only got a minute or so left here. First of all, thanks climate change again for the record-breaking over 90-degree weather in mid-May in Portland. And this is why I got a haircut. And anytime you hear the words new and record in the weather, that means the climate is changing. It means that the weather has changed, right? The climate is changed when we have a new record. So just keep that in mind. Keep that messaging in mind. Also, tip of the hat to Portland for being the first city in the United States to divest funds from Walmart, and a tip of the hat to Steve Novick, our city commissioner. And if you missed our video that we played on that, just go to YouTube and type in Filter Free Radio and Walmart, and all that good stuff will come up. Cecily McMillan sentenced to 90 days in jail and 5 years probation. I don't believe that anyone should get any sort of jail sentence for our constitutional right of redress of grievances, to protest nonviolently, and to make our voices heard. So continue to resist, continue to dissent, and continue to participate, and to continue to be the change that we need in the world. And go read Chris Hedges' article, They Can't Outlaw the Revolution, at truthdig.com. Huge thanks to everyone who makes this show possible. I could not do it without you, every single one of you. Skeptical Scott, our brother from another mother, our co-host. I love you, bro. Thanks to Nicole Sandler for syndicating us on radioornot.com. Thanks to We Act Radio for syndicating us on 1480 AM, weactradio.com. Thanks to Kenny Pick for syndicating us on Liberal Justice Radio. Thanks to Kevin McLeod of Incompetech.com and Dano of danosongs.com for music production. Thanks to our webmaster, website guru, Shano, for our awesome website and new one. And thanks to you, first and foremost, but last but not least, our listeners, our friends, for liking the show, for spreading the word, for helping us grow, grassroots, bottom up. Big thanks to you, our friends in the chat room. I love the conversation. I hope we can continue it next week. Give us a call, 503-746-TALK. Get out there, get active. Much love, y'all.
Filter Free Radio.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. So give me something to believe, 'cause I am living just to believe, and I need something more to keep on breathing for. So give me something to believe.
The revolution will be broadcast
Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Filter Free Radio.